today. We have a very important announcement to make, and it's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Teresa Jacobs, Mayor of Orange County.
Good morning, and Carol, thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, but thank you for your leadership on this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The launch of this project represents tremendous hope for Orange County and Central Florida families and individuals who are struggling with the heartbreak of addiction. It also represents our tremendous culture of compassion and collaboration. Since the onset of the opioid epidemic, this community, like none other, has banded together. In 2015, we joined with Sheriff Demings, now Mayor-elect Demings. We launched the Orange County Heroin Task Force, a collaborative multidisciplinary group that was comprised of 22 local community leaders from law enforcement, the judiciary, healthcare, treatment, education, and prevention. And from that task force, we came away with 37 recommendations. Some of the most important recommendations: we formed a pilot program at our Orange County Jail where we're providing Vivitrol to all medically eligible inmates. Vivitrol is an extended release injection medication that blocks the effects of heroin and opioids and reduces cravings. This gives those who are seeking treatment an upper hand, if you will, on dealing with that treatment. And the Orange County Jail was also the first in the state to provide Narcan to inmates upon release. We also effectively advocated for the passage of legislation that targets drug dealers that are dealing specifically in opioids like fentanyl. Fentanyl is up to 100 times more potent than heroin, but fentanyl was not classified as a Schedule I drug. Possession of 10 grams or more will now be a first-degree felony. The bill, which received bipartisan support, also stipulates that drug dealers could be charged with murder if the distribution of the drug is proven to be the cause of death of the user. This is real progress here in the state of Florida. Governor Scott signed the bill into law on June 14th, 2017, and that was followed by a decision by our Chief Judge, Fred Lawton, at the 9th Judicial Circuit, who is also a crucial member of our heroin task force. He has doubled the amount of bonds for first and second degree charges of heroin trafficking and fentanyl trafficking, another key tool in the deterrent of the trafficking. The Heroin Task Force was also a springboard for the standing order legislation. What standing order means is it means that any citizen, any resident in this state can go to their local pharmacy without a prescription and get Narcan. This is extremely important because there are many people who don't want to come forward to their doctors or to law enforcement out of fear, and they want to have Narcan on hand for a loved one who may be addicted. And it is absolutely crucial that we use Narcan when we can to keep people alive, so that they have the opportunity to make the right decision and seek treatment. As a result of our hard work on 2 separate occasions, I've been called to testify before Congress on the urgent need for resources that we're about to talk about today, not only for treatment, but for prevention and interdiction. As part of these resources, I'm proud to note that last year, in follow-up to another task force recommendation, we launched the Heroes Against Heroin website, where families across the state and across the region can access treatment information, view Naloxone training videos, learn more about opioid epidemic, and access our educational toolkit and prevention resources. At the conclusion of the Heroin Task Force, the Orange County Sheriff's Office and Orlando Police Department joined UCF Police Department in equipping their first responders with Naloxone. And I'm proud to say that over 1,400 law enforcement officers are now trained and equipped with Naloxone to date. And they have saved over 260 lives since we started this program just about 2 years ago. Naloxone is a vital component in the fight against opioid epidemic facing the nation, and it is equally important that we seek treatment. Florida has recently been awarded the SAMHSA State Opioid response grant in the amount of $100 million over the next 2 years to increase the access to medically assisted treatment for opioid addiction, recovery support services, and naloxone. We're glad to be partnering with the Florida Department of Children and Families to the Naloxone Leave Behind project. Through state funding, we have the opportunity to equip every emergency transport unit, like you see here, in Orange County Fire Rescue Department with naloxone kits that will be distributed to families and loved ones of those at high risk of experiencing opioid overdose. Orange County Fire Rescue is leading the way in this initiative as the first fire department in the state to implement this critical life-saving project. These kits will be distributed at the scene of suspected opioid overdoses and will provide families and loved ones with information on how to administer the naloxone. The kits also include handouts on the Heroes Against Heroin website, as well as 211 number, the United Way information helpline that will provide treatment resources in Central Florida and information on how to access medically assisted treatment for opioid addiction throughout Central Florida healthcare systems. We know that there is still much work to be done to combat this epidemic that's destroying families and taking too many lives. And we know that this disease does not discriminate. But as I stand here before you today, I have hope. I'm encouraged with programs like Project Leave Behind that provide the opportunity to train and equip family members, loved ones, and friends with medication that can assist and save someone's life and get them started on the path to recovery. In closing, I'd like to make a special mention and thank you to Ms. Austin Coy, a University of Miami medical student who's from Orange County, who reached out to Dr. Sharon at the Orange County Health Department, who then connected her to Orange County Fire Rescue leaders. I believe that Austin is also working with the Miami-Dade Fire Department about implementing a similar program there. Austin, keep up the great work. I like to think that you have something that we refer to here as public DNA. You're just born to do good for other people. So God bless you and keep on that mission. Today, I want to thank all that have participated in this effort, especially the members of our Heroin Task Force and people like Austin. Thank you. And on behalf of Orange County's children, families, and at-risk adults, I urge you to keep up this very, very meaningful work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jacobs. As a physician, I truly applaud the efforts that you have led here in Orange County, along with the outstanding accomplishments of the Heroin Task Force in the recent years. With this collaboration with the Florida Department of Children and Families, Orange County Fire Rescue Department, and the Orange County Medical Clinic, we are building a truly unique concept that attempts to reduce the seconds and the minutes in a critical timeline that means the difference between life and death. And while this is a collaboration truly among organizations, more so this is a strengthened partnership between the loved one who finds someone they care about experiencing an overdose and our first responders. We all know how dangerous opioids are. The initial use triggers a sense of euphoria, and along with that, affects the respiratory rate and the breathing pattern. And they have the ability to slow or stop someone's ability to breathe. I think it's really hard to understand the true magnitude of addiction, especially when you look at what the known effects of the medications are. However, it's not just as simple as walking away. Euphoria starts the process. At the same time, it takes more and more opiate to produce that euphoria, and the body then becomes dependent on having opioids in the system. And over time, without the presence of opioids, folks who are struggling with addiction, they tend to use as well to fight off the effects of withdrawal. So jitters, anxiety, stomach pain, cramps. It's truly a miserable experience. And so they use just to ease withdrawal. Now, naloxone, or Narcan, as it's commonly known, is an opioid antagonist. And so what that does is it blocks the effect of the opioid at the receptors in the brain. And it reverses the effects of the opioid, and it prevents the deadly side effects that we see of respiratory depression and respiratory arrest. And, in emergency, we really recognize that family and friends, those around the individuals that are using the opioids, are often the first responders. And Project Leave Behind aims to not only increase the availability of Narcan, Naloxone, to loved ones, but will make it available to the patient sooner than otherwise possible. And it's important to remember that this is not just individuals using intravenous opioids. This could be pills, it could be smoking, it could be any other form of opioid use. Orange County Fire and Rescue will be distributing a nasal form of Naloxone, which is easy to administer, and they will also be providing instructions to loved ones so they understand how to use and how to Naloxone and how to recognize signs of opioid overdose. And in a few minutes, we're going to walk through a demonstration of what an encounter may be like and how Narcan is administered, and we'll go through the 5 steps that we're going to be teaching families on the scene and loved ones about the use of Naloxone. But in the meantime, I would like to have the pleasure of introducing our Fire Chief, Orange County Fire Chief, Otto Drozd.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Zuver, and certainly Mayor Jacobs. Not just for the support and effort of today's life-saving announcement, but for the valued efforts you've put forth over the last several years, which have saved lives. As trained first responders, I can tell you that even for us, rushing into someone's home, finding a patient unresponsive on the street or in a car is not an easy experience, despite all our training. When lives hang in the balance, there is nothing routine about any call. I often remind myself and want to remind our crews, each and every call is someone's loved one. My goal for Project Leave Behind is that we equip and train loved ones through a series of tangible action steps to administer Narcan. In essence, they will be empowered to save lives in those crucial minutes prior to our arrival. We are in the business of saving lives. That is our profession. But to know that a life-saving drug could be available within homes, feet away, that could make a huge difference, that is incredible. I'm not sure that when I started as a firefighter, I could have imagined a program quite like this, a partnership between first responders and families. Just this past year, between October 2017 and September of 2018, fire rescue personnel administered over 1,300 doses of Narcan. To be clear, that does not equate to the number of overdoses, rather cases or scenarios of suspected overdose where Narcan was given. Just yesterday, Naloxone kits arrived at fire stations throughout Orange County for the placement on rescue units. When those kits are all distributed, more will be provided. Personnel are completing training now, and Mayor, these kits will be available to families as early as today. Opioid addiction or overdose cuts across all segments of our community, with the real potential to impact each and every family. Given our large, growing, and vital Hispanic community, it is essential to ensure the information on this program be made available in both English and Spanish. Let me reiterate, es esencial asegurar que la información sobre este programa es disponible en inglés y español. I, along with the 1,300 men and women of Orange County Fire Rescue Department, are honored to be the first in the state to launch this program. But this program is more than just about the distribution of Narcan. It is about hope and opportunity to seek ongoing treatment, which is critical. Shonda Hawkins, here with us today. Where is Shonda? There she is. Went door to door with us in February on a unique mission. At the time, a trend in deadly overdose cases had spiked in a local neighborhood. More than 100 Orange County Fire Rescue personnel took to the streets, distributing prevention and treatment information. They also carried Narcan for distribution as needed. Shonda was with us that day as she is with us here today. Shonda's mission is more personal. You see, she lost someone dear to her in this epidemic. So it's family and people like her that motivate us to do more and to do better. Thank you, Mayor Jacobs, for ensuring that Orange County Fire Rescue has been at the forefront of this life-saving mission and continues to be. Often, we are thought of in the sense of lights and sirens, but through your leadership, we have ensured that the men and women of Orange County Fire Rescue have had the opportunity to intervene and hopefully prevent the need for our response during an emergency. Our greatest accomplishment is saving a life. I assure this community that Orange County Fire Rescue will always do whatever it takes in that mission. And now Dr. Zuver will walk us through the steps that we will be instructing families to undertake in a suspected overdose. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief. So while we acknowledge, naloxone is simple to administer, in accordance with the governor's rule, we are going to be providing instruction to the loved ones, to family, on the scene of a suspected overdose on how to administer it. And Lieutenant Sloan's going to help me walk through this. Essentially, it's a 5-step process. And the first step, of course, is a recognition of overdose. So some potential signs of an opioid overdose could be unconsciousness or the inability to awaken your loved one. You may notice slow or shallow or even noisy breathing. And, as things progress, a bluish color to the lips, to the nail beds, those are all signs of opiate overdose. The second part is to assess the individual, and we do that by calling out to them to see if they're awake and responding. They may not, and then the next step is then to try to stimulate them with perhaps even the knuckles into the sternum gently to see if you get a response. At that point, we can be rest assured that there's something serious going on, and the next most important step we tell people is to call 911. And I can't emphasize that enough. Call 911. So we can get our responders on the road to help as well. Now, the body will process and break down naloxone much faster than opioids are broken down. So the point of that is that naloxone, after it's administered, can wear off before the opioid has. And you can have an individual that may return to the symptoms of an opioid overdose. Therefore, individuals may need more than one dose, and that it's essential that 911 is called and that our responders are on the road. Just because someone wakes up and starts to breathe and seem to breathe normally does not mean it will stay like that. And that's why we need to be there to help as well. Now, the fourth step will be the actual administration of naloxone. The naloxone comes packaged in a kit. It's a nasal application. And Lieutenant Sloan will demonstrate. You open. It's recommended to tilt the patient's head back slightly. And the plunger goes in the nostril. And you push. That will deliver a atomized dose of naloxone, where it will be absorbed via the nasal cavity. And then finally, it's reassess, continuing to monitor and wait for 911 to respond. And that's the process. It's 5 steps. And finally, before I close, I do want to just reiterate that naloxone, starting in 2016, became available without a prescription. And while the kits that we have here will be for distribution by the paramedics responding to overdose calls, that loved ones can reach out to their pharmacies. They can reach out to the Orange County Medical Clinic for assistance in obtaining naloxone, a life-saving drug. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zuver. Thank you, Mayor Jacobs, Chief Drozd. This concludes the press announcement. I want to see if anyone has any questions of the mayor, the chief, and Dr. Zuver. Dr. Zuver, okay.
That someone could do something wrong while they're doing this on their own?
No, that's a great question. Naloxone is an incredibly safe drug, and essentially, if there's no opioids present, it's not going to have any effect. So that's one of the wonderful things about Naloxone. It's tailored specifically for opioids, and it won't affect anything else. Now, on the downside, it doesn't affect any other possible co-ingestions, but it's really a safe drug.
Narcan, it is often asked by the public if the knowledge that they can be safe sometimes enables users. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I don't really, in my practice, I haven't noticed that. I think that it's a frightening thing that most people, when they're confronted with an overdose, I have not seen folks feel more comfortable using because there's Narcan. Thank you.
And if I could speak to that for just a minute, because along the way I've had the opportunity to meet a number of people who are addicted. And I think, as the doctor was explaining, it's hard for any of us who aren't addicted to understand how powerful that addiction is. And the idea that the decision that having Narcan present is going to make a difference is not, from the folks that I know, is not part of the mindset. It is such a drive just to restore yourself to some sense of normalcy, to just to deal with the withdrawal effects, that the thought of whether or not Narcan is going to save your life becomes almost irrelevant in the equation. So I know that we tend to think that we're aiding and abetting. The reality is people that are seriously addicted to opioids need treatment, and they're going to, if they don't get treatment, they're very likely going to take opioids again on their own.
Certain thing, like if they've overdosed before, you're going to give the families the medication, or how do you decide who gets the Narcan?
That's going to be part of the training that we give personnel to really evaluate the scene. And if they go to a suspected overdose, they're going to talk to the family members and give them the 5-step instructions that were highlighted today, so that they can leave that behind. So they're going to evaluate just those of suspected overdoses and hand them out in those households. So the example that was given here today, running through what constitutes an overdose with the blue lips, the nail beds, oftentimes we get there in time to save that person's life. But there could be a reoccurrence. So in those cases, when we show up on scene, we're able to make a difference in saving that person's life. The family is left behind to wonder, what could they do? So in this case, we're giving them the tools, the equipment, the training to actually buy us precious minutes, because a lot of times the dosages that people are taking to get the same euphoric effect are increasing. So it's going to be more likely that time that we got there and were able to save them without somebody having Narcan on hand, the next time could be a death of a family member.
Absolutely, and I think to most of us that have never had that kind of an addiction, it's just incomprehensible to think that once you nearly died, that you would use again. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to you. But our brains haven't been rewired to be so dependent upon opioids that we don't feel like we can function without that. So you have to recognize that while we can't understand it, we know that there is a decent possibility of somebody using opioids again. But what's also important to understand, this kit isn't just Narcan. This kit is a kit that also says there's treatment. Now's the time to reassess whether it's time to get treatment. And we'd like to think that the first time somebody overdoses, that they're going to have that moment of awakening. But if they don't, we also know that there's usually family members involved, and that those family members are also equipped with, wait a minute, there is actually treatment out there that I can get my loved one into treatment. So the treatment is just it's more important, honestly, than the Narcan. They're equally important. They need to come together, and we need to recognize that if there's any time to change somebody's pathway, it's at the time that they've overdosed.
They don't, necessarily want to wait till their loved one almost overdoses. Can they reach out and get a kit like this ahead of time?
Absolutely, absolutely. Do not, if you have a member of your family that you know is addicted to opioids, do not wait. I carry Narcan with me at all times. My son is a firefighter. He saw it in my purse and wanted to know what's going on. I carry it with me because I don't know who I'm going to come across, and I've learned enough to know how safe it is to use it if I have a reason to suspect it. So if you have a loved one that is using, definitely, you can go to your pharmacy. You do not have to have a prescription. You do have to go up to the pharmacist and ask. It's not, sitting on the shelf, but you have to go up, or you can get it through, Chief, help me out, or Doctor, help me out, Orange County Medical Clinic. And you can come there if that makes you feel more comfortable than going to your local pharmacist. The reason it was important to us to have this as an over-the-counter, not needing a prescription, it was we also know that going to your doctor might not make you feel very comfortable going to your doctor and saying, I'm an addict, or, I have a loved one. And addict, I don't even like that term, because it's not a decision. It is a medical condition. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible to get Narcan. We also want to make it as easy as possible to get treatment.
Sure, it will be noted on our patient care reports when we distribute those, because through the state we will be resupplied when the initial supply goes out. And for those people that need information on where they can get Narcan, the mayor aptly described where they can go, but they also have the ability to dial 211, and 211 can direct them to treatment options as well as where they can secure doses of Narcan for their family members.
Neighborhood and maybe what might have led to that?
Sure. That was an initiative between the Sheriff's Office, the Heroin Task Force, and so what we did is we found hot spots through mapping, through GIS mapping within Orange County where the Sheriff had responded, where we had responded. So it wasn't just one neighborhood, but several neighborhoods that we went and we actually distributed information on treatment, and if people requested Narcan on that visit, we also distributed it there. And that picture is the day we went out with 100 fire rescue personnel that went and really canvassed several neighborhoods.
Are there certain areas that you could tell us that you remember off the top of your head?
I don't have that information with me right now, but the important thing about opioid addiction is it crosses all demographics. There's not one group that's more susceptible than the other. It's everybody's problem, and thousands of people across the United States are dying each and every day or each and every year because of this insidious epidemic, and Project Leave Behind will address that to a significant degree within Orange County.
Regarding your question about where, I think another thing to remember is it's not so, as the chief mentioned, it's not a community. Where we saw a lot of overdoses had as much to do with the type of drug that was being distributed in that area. So those hot spots sometimes pop up because of the very intense, potent fentanyl or opioids that are in the drug, which is also a really important message. You have no idea the intensity of the drug that you're taking. And that's something I think is important for family members. As they're talking to loved ones who maybe have become addicted to this drug, to remember that there's no safe level that you're buying on the street. It just doesn't exist. It's always a gamble. It's always a risk with your life.